So a little introduction on myself. My name is Hassel Aviles. I'm one of the co-founders of Not 9 to 5. I grew up in this industry, not just restaurants. You know, I think today's conversation might end up talking about hospitality industry in general, not just restaurants. I love this industry, but I have a lot of issues with this industry as well. I have a little bit of a love-hate relationship. And so one thing I wanted to just start with is, you know, we use the word reimagine, and we throw around sometimes words like hope, optimism, positivity. And I just wanted to be really, really clear, you know, on behalf of not just myself, but Not 9 to 5. When we're saying, you know, when we're sending out messages of hope, when we're trying to put out optimism out into the industry, it's not meant to diminish any of the negative that exists. I think all of our experiences have a mix of both. For me, you know, hope is accepting that things are difficult right now, but that there is a fundamental belief that there's like a light at the end of the tunnel that we're working towards getting to. In terms of positivity, sometimes I have a bit of a trouble with that because I feel like it's a little bit of a denial of reality. I think for a lot of us, things aren't wonderful all the time, and things often can feel actually quite the opposite of wonderful. So I just wanted to put that out there, that when we say optimism, when we say hope, it's not to diminish that, you know, there is negative and there is pain and there is suffering, but that there is a belief that the future, you know, that there can be some change, positive change. And so with that, I would like to ask you guys to introduce yourselves, because I feel like you'll do a better job than I ever could. So maybe start with Tamara and Adam, and then Christine and Suzanne.
Hey, hi everyone. I'm Tamara Jensen from Dispatch, co-owner with Adam, and the marketing communications.
And I'm Adam, co-owner, cook, and yeah.
Plumber,
electrician, or Sparky, as we call it, Chippy, bit of everything. Yeah. Welcome.
And Dispatch is in St. Catharines, downtown St. Catharines, and we opened in March of 2019. So we just celebrated our 1-year anniversary before we shut it all down for the pandemic.
Yeah.
Hi, my name is Christine Flynn, and I am the executive chef and a partner at IQ Food Co., which is a Toronto-based healthy, fast, casual restaurant group. Like most cooks, I also have a lot of side jobs. So I also do some cooking where I live in Beamsville, Ontario, and I do social media out here. And yeah, I'm just excited to talk about my experience, which, you know, the healthy, fast, casual and takeout scene is, I think, going to be a huge part of this conversation. So this is going to be a good one. Thanks for having me.
Hey guys, my name is Suzanne Barr. I am the partner and head chef of True Diner. We opened September 11th last year, and we closed our doors in March due to COVID, and have not reopened. We're not offering any takeout. I think our decision was a very challenging decision, but I think overall we stuck to our guns, and what we have been doing has been trying to really reimagine what we could become with the shifts and pivots that are happening, that we're seeing all over, from restaurants to cafes to independently owned individuals that have worked in this industry. I've been in this industry for about 14 years and lived in Toronto for about 6 of those years. And it's been an interesting ride. I run the restaurant with my partner and husband. And, you know, we had a small restaurant before called Saturday Dinette that we very much so loved. And I think that we're just hopeful that more small independent restaurants can get the platforms and the voice out there to be able to figure out how do we pivot? What do we want this industry to look like? How can we make a difference? How can we impact the future of cooks and front of the house, back at the house, bartenders, anyone and anyone that's interested with working within this industry, or those that are considering going into this industry. So I too, like Erin, I do a lot of uh, work outside of working in my restaurant, with a lot of advocacy. I'm speaking out a lot on panels and discussions. And so this is a pleasure and an honor to be with you guys today and to share my story and to share what we've been doing, and hopefully, you know, to answer as much of, you know, the questions that I'm puzzled with every day.
I think that's so great, the way you're talking about helping to shape the next generation. That's a conversation that Hassel and I have often. You know, I think a lot of what we're doing is planting seeds so that the next generation do have it better than us. I mean, I remember being a young person entering the industry, and there were so many things that were normalized that really, I mean, and still to this day, they shouldn't be normalized. You know, I started working, I was working like 60 hours a week as a 17, 18-year-old, and I was making $350 a week on day pay. And it's just like, you know, that kind of, you know, mentality has started to shift, which is great. But, you know, it really will take additional, you know, emphasis from all of us to, you know, inspire kind of and actually take part in this next bit of change. And I think the first step of that is cultivating the ideas. And we've identified some problems. We're going to continue to discuss the problems, but based off of the problems, you know, let's not just talk about the problems, let's talk about the solutions. And I think for me, that's a big part of it, is let's focus on what we can do and where we can go with the current state of where we are actually as an industry.
Yeah, so just to add a little bit to that, I really feel like we all accept that we need to reimagine and that there needs to be change made. We're unsure how to make that change. We don't have all the answers, but we can definitely keep the conversation growing so that we can keep shifting to get closer to the answers and the solutions. I think that, you know, we all accept that the one constant in life is change, but yet for many of us, change feels threatening. You know, so I think that, yes, the unknown is scary, but we can't keep clinging to archaic principles that no longer serve us. You know, and in a way, we're living in a crisis full of danger and opportunity. So we all know what the dangers are, and we're here to talk about what the opportunities, you know, exist at the same time. So, you know, there's, as we know, there's epidemic levels of mental health and substance use in our industry, and yet we don't talk about it very much. So we talk a lot about the products and the supply chain and ingredients and recipes, and yet, you know, there's so little talk about the people like yourselves that make it all. So in terms of workplace mental health, we wanted to start the conversation with that because I feel like it's an opportunity where we can reimagine a little bit. You know, can we talk more about the people? Like, can we invest more in people and invest more in workplace mental health? You know, our industry sadly is considered one of the worst industries for workplace mental health across North America. So the Mental Health Commission of Canada defines workplace mental health. You know, this isn't a term that we use every day in our industry. We talk more about food products and, you know, beverage and services and such, but the Mental Health Commission of Canada defines workplace mental health as, you know, workplaces they play an essential part in maintaining positive mental health. They can give people the opportunity to feel productive and be a strong contributor to employee well-being. Yet it can also be a stressful environment that contributes to the rise of mental health problems and illnesses. So having said that and keeping that in mind, the first question I want to point to the panel, and whoever wants to jump in, feel free. You know, how do you address workplace mental health?
Well, I'll go. I actually, just jumping off what you said before, in terms of the pandemic, for me, what's been really interesting is this is actually probably the first time in my career that I've been a lot more open about my mental health, because we still have 2 restaurants open that are serving takeout, and we have a Zoom call actually right now, but I'm missing it, a couple times a week to talk to the team. And I've definitely been like much more open than I ever have before. If I'm like having a good day or a bad day and there aren't implications for the team, I've been really open about, like, I definitely have some days where I'm not productive. I'm not able to really do anything. You know, I mean, I have 2 3-year-olds, so I have to do a lot of things. But I think just in terms of like the pandemic, like allowing people to be a little bit more open and normalize the fact that it's okay not to be okay, and to have more conversations like this, I really think that that's a silver lining. And that's something that no matter what happens, like, I don't think we're going to be able to take that back, especially if there's thought leaders, like I think each of us are, that are open about it. Like, I really think that we're going to make a lot of progress in terms of allowing people the space to just talk about their feelings a little bit more, and kind of what they're able to do or not do as it relates to the work.
I think that's so well said. I think it's such a clear illustration, like you're saying, that, you know, everyone is affected by mental health. It's not, you know, mental illness doesn't affect everyone, but mental health does. Every single person has it. And so I think it's such a clear illustration right now in these times. You're absolutely right to you know, make sure that everyone is acknowledging that it's not just right now, it's always, you know, in, you know, 6 years or 6 months or, you know, 6 decades, it doesn't matter. It's still going to be the case that everyone has mental health.
One thing I'm taking out of COVID, out of this whole pandemic, I haven't spent this much time with my wife since we first met.
13 years ago.
So I think the amount of reflection that myself and many other chefs in the industry are having at this time is really a positive, which is we're able to look at what we do and realize how selfish we are. But what we need to take from this is that we do need to change, which is why we're here. There needs to be that balance in our industry. I'm happy to work 80 hours a week. Like everyone in this industry, that's what we've done. That's what we grow up doing. But is it sustainable? No. Is it healthy? No. So we need to flip that on its head. I've enjoyed having the time to spend with Tam. I've enjoyed having a little bit of extra time where I can go out and focus attention on my running and physical health. If we go back to a restaurant model like we did before, well, that's gone again, unless we make changes. You look at any other 9-to-5 sort of job, everyone works their 8 hours and then they're off the clock and their mind isn't even on work. They are financially looked after, they're in a healthy state, and not all the time, I understand, but I think we forget very quickly how much we're chained to our job. We don't have that luxury of being able to finish an 8-hour workday, go and work out at the gym, spend it with friends, go out every weekend, because all we do is work. That definitely needs to change. And like with us, we're talking and so like Suzanne said when she was introducing herself, we're utilizing this time. We haven't opened up to do takeout. We're concentrating on rebranding or rebuilding and redesigning a concept to go forward. And I like Tam and other people, we're trying to figure out a more healthy model so that we are able to go back and have a balanced life after this, because I don't want to return to 16 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Yeah, I just want to add, I think it's a huge opportunity right now. We have the time to sort of take a breath and think a little bit. When we first opened, we opened as a living wage employer. We made a commitment to pay our team at very bare minimum a living wage. We eliminated a tipping model. We've had, mixed responses from fellow industry members about that. we've had nothing but positive responses from employees and prospective talent and our guests and all of that. So we've had, you know, other restaurateurs contact us and say, how do we change our model? We're in the middle, you know, we've opened 10 years ago and half our team makes tips, and how do we just change our model? And I think now is potentially an opportunity to look not just at wages, but at how you can change things across the board.
I won't hold on. I won't keep gas bagging on that. Nothing's been easy. We're not perfect. We've made mistakes in our first year, 100%. We're the first. I can put my hand up and do it. I've got no shame in making mistakes. That's how we learn. But yes, with the whole, you know, getting rid of tipping and finding out a better structure, it needs to happen for sure.
I just wanted to jump in and just thank you guys all. I mean, I think that all that you were saying, I completely agree with. You know, like literally a week before we shut our doors, I had a breakdown. And I'm not ashamed to admit that into all that are on this call. I had literally a breakdown. I was being torn between so many things going on in my personal life, between my 5-year-old son to all the work of the boards that I'm a part of, to doing speaking engagements and just so many different things. And I had an event coming up in May and we needed to kind of get things in motion. And I had to back out of it because I knew that I did not have the mental ability to just even have the conversation in March to talk about May. I am not perfect. I am not like a robot. I can't just keep going. And since opening our first restaurant 6 years ago, I have done that. I arrived here from the US and I have just been running my ass off in this industry, and I love it and I adore what I do. And my husband and I, we both opened that small restaurant. And the day I found out that we were opening a restaurant was the day I got pregnant. You know, I found out I was having a baby. And this has been like a part of my life, my whole career here in Toronto. And now the last 2 months, we've been having dinner with our son. We've been able to have date night. We've been able to just like, I've been able to pick up a book. I was able to meditate after not being able to meditate for I don't even know how many years. I was able to just be still in my shit and be okay with it. You know, there's so many negative attributes of COVID, but there are so many things that I'm trying to take from it that has really enhanced myself and also my relationship with my staff, my family, and be able to show up in these conversations with true honesty, to be able to talk to everybody and just no bullshit, like all bullshit aside, like this is where I've been at, and this shit has been hard, and this has been a struggle the last 2 months, but I am grateful for having 2 months to really collect myself and fucking breathe, because we haven't been able to do that in a long time. And I don't want to run that race. I don't want to I will continue to take the risk as an entrepreneur. That's just part of who I am. And my family, my dad was an entrepreneur. My grandfather was. It's a part of my DNA, I feel. And my partner as well, you know. And I just know that this time has really enabled me to be able to think about the future and to be able to call upon people that I trust in this industry and those that I don't know, and ask the question and push back and just ponder and take a walk and really envision. We have, you know, Zoom calls with our staff whenever we can. I've been cooking meals and seeing those that do want to pick up food to eat. You know, it's a struggle for so many of us. But I do feel that hope and all the amazing things that Hassel has mentioned earlier is what is continuing to be a part of the conversation, and what I'm hopeful we'll be able to see when we reopen our doors in a way that's going to, you know, give us all hope that, okay, there was a lot of greatness that is going to come of this, and there's a lot of shit that, you know, a lot of sadness that also has come of all of this.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Suzanne. First of all, thank you. It's not always easy to admit that. I've had many a breakdown in my life, and it's not something we talk about a lot, you know, but I really appreciate you bringing that up because, and it's interesting how you said it happened before the pandemic. I know a lot of people have had breakdowns since the pandemic. You know, it's become a much more common thing, but, and burnout, I mean, burnout is such a real fucking thing in this industry. We are so conditioned to deplete ourselves. So I really appreciate you bringing that up.
Yeah, I think, you know, in what you're saying as well, like the part that really strike me, it's these notions that we have to live a certain way. Adam, you kind of touched on it as well. It's you know, these preconceived notions that are such, you know, stemming from such archaic principles that, you know, if you were to trace, you know, the reason and at what point, you know, chefs started working 16, 17 hours a day, like, you know, when would it even be? Like, you know, the answer isn't even there. So, you know, now we're faced with an opportunity to say, okay, well, we're obviously, you know, people who have been in the industry for quite a while and industry leaders and managing teams. So something needs to shift because we're feeling a certain way that's bringing us to this point of, you know, having, you know, breakdowns and being completely burnt out. And you know what, like, I'm sure that everyone can relate when I say, like, you know, I've gotten in my personal life to a point where there are days where I don't like doing what I'm doing. And I think that's something that everyone goes through based on, you know, the extreme conditions that we're living in. So aside from that, there's the other side, which is that I have so much love and passion for this industry. And so, you know, how do we make the conditions more livable? What else can we do to make this industry a better place? And actually, that will be a question, if you don't mind, Christine, Suzanne, and then Adam, Tamara. Let's go in that order.
Well, I mean, I think what's interesting too is like the first like actual restaurant, like the way that we know it with a varied menu and servers was in Paris in like 1765. Like it's actually a fairly modern construct, this restaurant. Like it's younger than democracy, and democracy also is not, as we know, always working. So the idea that we have a system that we've inherited and it's going to be perfect, like it just doesn't make any sense. And another of the sort of benefits of COVID is that we can look at it and just be like, this makes no sense. Like, and we know that. I'm sure everyone here read the Gabrielle Hamilton article, which was, I thought, excellent. But I mean, I've had this conversation with Hassel and I think also with Adam and Tam, but like, I really think that there has to be an awareness coming from the guest about the true cost of food, not just, and Adam, you say this so well when you talk about like buck-a-shuck, and I don't want to throw shade at anyone doing buck-a-shuck because like I understand, but like if you're doing buck-a-shuck oysters, like someone's getting squeezed. And there's other examples that I could use, but when you do a 2-for-1, when you sell food at what it's worth or less than it's worth, someone is getting squeezed, and the guest doesn't always recognize that. They're like, oh, I want to go out for cheap food. And they don't necessarily understand that either the producer or the person who is driving the food, the person who's unpacking the food, the person who's cleaning the food, the person who's cleaning the dishes, the person who's serving the food, someone is getting squeezed. And I think all of us, as we're kind of coming to this collective awareness, like, I don't want to be squeezed anymore. You know, I'm all squeezed out. Like, you can't get blood from a stone. And I think that we really need to start charging appropriately, and people who want to eat in restaurants, because let me tell you, I would pay a lot of money for someone else to cook my dinner and pour my wine right now, like a lot of money. I think that there has to be like an awareness that there's a new normal. I would pay a lot of money for someone to do my dishes, like 2-3-year-olds, like you can imagine. Like, so I think that that's where we have to start, and we need to keep communicating that to people, that like, this is what this costs. And if I sell less, if you don't want to come, that's okay. Because I know for me in this time, again, you can't take 2-3-year-olds to a grocery store. Like, I have not been for groceries in something like 6 weeks. And like, you know, my boyfriend brings me tomatoes or whatever, but like, I'm so much more self-reliant now. I'm spending less money than ever because I'm not going out, and I will be okay with less. And I would rather live like that than work like crazy and have people not really appreciate what I do. So I guess I'm voting for quality over quantity, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally.
Christine,
I think that's such a great
thank
point.
you for bringing that up, because Ariel and I had this conversation when we were preparing for today, and I went on a full rant about what you just said. And I'm so glad you brought that, because I totally forgot to mention that. We need to educate the consumer, because you're absolutely right. Someone's getting fucked when you're charging nothing for food, because food is expensive and experience is expensive, and overhead. I mean, any place that has to pay overhead plus all those other things. Anyways, I just want to thank you, Christine, for making that incredible point.
Yeah, it really is such a powerful point. And I think the other aspect there is that, you know, Hassel kind of touched on it earlier, is actually factoring wellness into our business plan. It should be a line item on our actual business plan, so that, you know, we are, you know, thinking to the actual staff. We're not just thinking about what the finished product, you know, it's funny, we always talk about, for me, I always talk about hamburgers as an analogy for this, because it's something that's such a relatable item. And to me, if a hamburger costs $26, but I know that the staff are living well, they're getting what they need to survive, and it's a good hamburger, I'm happy with that. That doesn't matter. I would rather pay $26 for a good hamburger than $13 for a burger that someone's getting squeezed, like you were saying, Christine.
Yeah, and I think too, I know in this time as well, you know, I've really put a limit on what I'm ordering to my house, or actually I have a PO box because I live out in the country, but I'm not ordering from other places anymore because I want to support local people. And if that means, again, you know, waiting until my tomatoes grow, or, you know, going to, you know, the winery around the corner, I would much rather do that at this time. And I think, you know, hopefully the consumer will understand that, like, you need to put the money back into your community. And especially as we're unsure of how supply chains are going to work anyway, I really think it's important that, you know, where we've been saying we're going local, like we really need to do it now. And again, people need to be prepared to pay a little more.
I think I'll jump in on that point. You know, I think that I, like most people, are at my wit's end with other people benefiting off of my back. Sorry, straight up. I want to benefit the point that my team are going to be able to get home in time to be with their family. I want to be able to know that the people that are putting the hours in, as long as I'm putting the hours in, are also benefiting in a way. Something that we established very early when we thought about even opening the restaurant was to be able to have equal pay across the board, and also to train our staff across the board of how to cook in the kitchen, how to do dishes, how to service our guests in the front of the house, and also how to make cocktails. And so with all that I've been reading, whether it's from Restaurants Canada, jumping on calls for restaurants in the US and what's happening here in Canada, I've been hearing a lot about, you know, what we're going to be expecting with like some of the cutbacks in our space and capacity, and the modification that we're going to have to do within our space to be able to open up. And I think a lot of that has to do with like, well, if you're taking half of my capacity away, then does that mean that I have to lay off certain staff because I can't bring everyone back on? Or does that mean that maybe that gives me a way to be able to shift them from, you've been working in the front of the house, but now we need some support in another area, like our packaging. When we're opening up a bakery, we're also doing some meal plans and some meal kits. So I think, not that in any way I had this in my head that I knew that something like this was coming. I don't think anyone knew this was coming, but I think I'm always trying to vision a new way of being able to run a business, to be able to show that your skills are transferable. The first work that I ever did has prepared me for the work that I currently do right now. And I started off in film and television, and now I'm working in the kitchen. baking and cooking and training individuals. And I think that that's such a big part of the work that I'm like so trying to spearhead and trying to really express and share that, the value of making sure that your staff know their worth every day that they come in. They know that if they're not having a good day, or if they're having something going on personally, that they can just say, hey chef, or hey whoever, I'm gonna leave a little earlier, whatever the case might be, and to really understand the value in the people. It's the sustainability of food is vitally important, but if not the most important, it's the sustainability of your staff and you as a person, you as people. Because if we can't get up and do this, who the heck is going to do it? We're seeing the shortages of both front and back of the house, and we're seeing the numbers decline. We're seeing that students that are graduating from culinary schools are not trying to go into this industry. And I don't blame them. Knowing all of the fucking things that are happening and the instabilities, the inequalities, the imbalances, the lack of representation, all these things that you're not hearing or you're not being privy to because maybe you're not in the inner circle of certain restaurateurs, or you're not a part of a certain part of the city that you might get more coverage, or you hear or you see someone that represents you and what you're trying to do with food. But I think it is important to understand the sustainability of the people that make up this industry, and how how high we value it. A lot of us lost our families when we had to shut our doors, because the restaurant families, the family meals are everything. That's sometimes for people, the one meal of the day they may only ever have to sit down with someone that they see every single day and they love. And I really, really think that, that's what I'm looking forward to. And that's, when I think about where my scale and my understanding of what we're going to be tackling when we reopen is the value of the sustainability of our team, ourselves, moving into what the future can look like doing this work that we do.
So well said.
I totally agree. Suzanne, you're bang on everything you said. And it's a harsh reality sometimes, to think about, I think. Okay, let's hear from Adam and Tamara, and then I want to come back to a few of the comments that people are making in the chat box, but I'll let you guys speak first to answer Ariel's question. Ariel, can you reword the question again for Tamara and Adam before they jump in?
Yeah, totally. So, I guess, with everything that we're saying, focusing on the future, what direction do you guys think you can walk in to better the future of, restaurants on a whole? Your restaurant in specific, but restaurants on a whole.
Yeah, I think going back to what Christine was saying, education is such a huge part of it. It's tough. You put something out on Instagram about something that you stand for, believe in, or something that you're doing in your restaurant, and you get ripped apart because it's not the right platform. You're just a lone voice. So I think it's all of us working together to say, this needs to change. Guess what? This is what food costs. Guess what? This is what it costs for your server to have benefits. And what you mentioned earlier, Ariel, is, working in the wellness component in your business model. So since we started, we've been talking about organizing wellness events and seminars and workshops. And I think originally, Hassel, I reached out to you like 6 months ago saying, hey, we want to do some kind of workshop. What can we do? It's important to take care of your team. Like you said, Suzanne, they are the core. They are the most important element of any business. And especially in hospitality, it's people who make it special. Yes, the food's amazing, the drinks are amazing, the atmosphere is amazing. End of the day, it's about the people.
Yeah. Where I'm sort of imagining things, we all keep touching on it. You spoke so well there, Suzanne and Christine, but we're flipping what we were doing on its head when we reopen. The amount of unknowns are astronomical. There's like I think when the rug was swept out from under our feet, I went into 2 weeks of complete blackout. I can't remember. I've got very little memory of the first 2 or 3 weeks of this thing. But moving forward, I know that the model will be completely different. Dispatch that was dispatch pre-COVID will not be dispatch post-COVID. We don't know how many people we're going to be able to seat yet. We don't know when we can open. So the focus will be wholeheartedly sending the message to people that they need to start paying more for dining. Bottom line, the whole oyster buck-shuck thing. I mean, it's bang on. We as a whole, and this is a global thing, all the chefs that I speak to from back home, everyone's the same thing. Like we've undervalued what we do far too long now. Like it needs to be changed. We need to start charging more. Okay, food is I'm going blank on my words. No, food. We all get food. We're allowed it. But dining isn't a privilege, or is? It is a privilege, and then I'm stuck on my other word. Anyway, we can't stick to that. Moving forward, we need to be charging more for what we do, and coming out of this, the amount of revenue that's going to need to be made up to be able to cover the costs of a model that wasn't set up to be this why are we telling people that $1 for an oyster is what it is? Why do we have to go and pay? Ariel, you talked about hamburgers. Majority of people will go to a pub and fork out $14.99 for a hamburger, but then they add all the other trimmings to it, and it takes it over $20. But in their mind, they only spent $14.99 on that burger. All those micro purchases don't add into the cost of what the person was thinking. But yeah, like we need to pay more. $26 for a burger. I don't care if it's $26. If it's good, that's what it is.
Yeah, just jumping. I saw Wes asked in the comments, how do we feel challenged to push this forward in Ontario? And it's tricky. I mean, there's always going to be the restaurants who are buck-a-shucking and, doing deals and all of that. And in any industry, there's that. I used the analogy the other day where there's Payless shoes and then there's Gucci shoes. In every industry, there's that sort of cheap model, the cheap eats, all of that. And then there's the more premium luxury experience. That's never going to change. It's just like, I'm going back to what I said, it's about educating that, fine dining, quality food, quality ingredients, quality service is not the cheap eats model. That's not Payless shoes. And so people need to pay for it.
I totally agree with you, Tamara. I think that pointing out the difference between the two products, instead of saying that they're all burgers, they're not all burgers. They're not all dining. There's specific examples where, you don't question that a Toyota costs less than a BMW. Just like your point of Payless shoes and Gucci shoes. No one questions that Gucci costs more. And I think there's two things I want to point out. So someone asked here, practically speaking, how can the industry, actually educate the consumer? Like, how can we actually in practice do that? Because it's an easy thing to say, right? We all are agreeing that this needs to happen, but how are you, is it through social media? Is it through your service staff? Is it through an overarching rebranding of your menu and explaining to people how things work? Is it explaining supply chain? I mean, the mainstream consumer, I get the whole old school mentality of the consumer doesn't give a shit, they just want to eat and go. That's kind of I remember being raised with that mentality of they don't care, they just want to eat and go. I don't know if I agree with that anymore. So I wanted to also put out this idea that I keep hearing and reading about from, I've seen it in a couple American articles around explaining eating as more of an entertainment, you know, because as a performance almost, right? Like you go grab a burger from McDonald's, fine, that's one experience. But you go down, you know, for anyone that's not in Toronto, there's a place called Richmond Station. If I go to Richmond Station and eat a Richmond Station burger or Canoe or Bymark or any of those places, that's a different experience. And there is a show and there is staff and there is a whole thing. And in performance, oftentimes you pay for theater tickets. And even if something happens, you pay for it ahead of time. You know, in Alinea in Chicago, that's how they operate their business model. You pay before, you book ahead. And I'm just wondering what the panel thinks about this idea of eating as entertainment as a way to possibly educate the consumer more to pay more, because it is going to have to require a lot of investment to convince the consumer to pay more. So I'm just curious, like, how can we practically do that logistically?
It's tough.
I think transparency is key. I think people respond in general really well to transparency, especially more and more these days. You know, using whatever channels you have to spell out, you know, this is what dining at such and such a place is. This is what goes into it. This is, you know, the not just the costs, but, you know, the 20 years of experience in the industry, the lessons learned, the professionalism of our staff, you know, like
it's giving sorry to cut you off, it's giving the power to the staff, like giving the staff a voice. And everyone's talked about it tonight, today, right now. Everyone, we need to give our staff a voice. Our industry is made up of professionals, but unfortunately that's not the message that we're conveying to the general public. So that needs to start to happen. Every single person within a business is a professional and a leader in their own right. They need to have a voice, and the customers, the guests need to have that or see that for sure.
Mm-hmm. Our guests, our staff, our dining staff especially, have a lot of opportunity to educate our guests. You know, when someone goes to leave a tip and they literally can't on the machine, that's a huge opportunity for our team to explain our model, our philosophy, you know, why they're so passionate about what they do, all of that. So we kind of have that opening in the moment, speaking face to face with our guests, which I think is really, really powerful.
I completely agree with Pam and Adam. You know, I think that transparency is key. It holds a lot of water for a lot of people. It shows a vulnerability. It shows an authenticity that you don't always see from this industry. You see the faces of the people that arrive, and there's a certain expectation when you walk into certain restaurants that people are automatically have, and it's a privilege. It's a privilege. We're all privileged right now to be on this call. And we're all privileged to be able to say that we work in this industry and to do what we do, because there's a lot of people in this world that do not have the same advantages that we do. And I really recognize that. In addition to everything that you said, Hassel, I think that, you know, using your platforms, using collaborative events and sharing your like-minded ideas with other restaurateurs, building a bridge of relationships so that if you feel unsupported, that you can call on someone that you trust within the industry and that you can also bounce some ideas off of. I think we have a very separate but equal approach, but I think let's unite us a bit more as restaurateurs, as restaurants, as industry folks, to be able to really see and make some decisions, because there's no one advocating for us. If we didn't do this, no one else was going to do this platform. No one else was going to do this conversation. And really, truly, if we don't continue to do these conversations, to push back and to ask government to get engaged, get involved, get some policy, get some things in motion, this will continue to happen. And independently, each restaurant will do what they do best. You know, whether it's to show a bit more transparency, whether it is to offer health benefits and wellness program which is all incredible, amazing. But if we don't hear those stories, if we don't find a way to relate and to be able to share our steps towards trying to shift and make changes, then I think that we're just going to continue to fester and stay in these spaces. But I welcome these conversations. I welcome an opportunity to go to Dispatch and to go to IQ Kitchen, and to anyone else that's on this platform today, to hear what they have to say. working with organizations like Hospitalities Workers, and like to be able to use Dixon Hall and other work training based organizations that are here to really support us and we to support them and those in the industry. I think it's really, really a great point of really, really reflecting back to transparency is key. It's really, really a big part of it. And utilizing your platforms, your voice, your communities to really effortlessly put it out there and let people see what you're doing. You know, it's like, you know, I say this a lot, you know, if you want to show what your actions, you got to actually be in the act of doing it. And if we're not in the act of doing that, we'll never know what we could have done.
I think that's so great. I mean, I totally agree. I think, you know, at a very high level, kind of the consistent message that we're saying that I hear anyways, is that this needs to be included in the overall brand ethos and the brand values of, you know, businesses and our business. And if we can include this into our actual, you know, brand values, then that will reflect in everything that we're doing, from the way we're staffing to the amount of money that our staff are making, to the health and wellness strategies, you know, for our staff, you know, to the food and the way that we're actually supporting, you know, the different chain of supply, like the supply chain. I think it's so important to, you know, start revisiting the actual foundation of where the business lies.
Yeah, absolutely. I did want to bring up another question we got. I'm curious what you guys think, because you know, we've all been employees in the past. I know you're right now employers, but someone asked, you know, how can we protect ourselves as employees in terms of, you know, for the most part, many employees in the past have had quite a negative sometimes experience of feeling like people come first. You know, we're all saying it right now, but maybe they, like, I know for myself, when I was an employee, I only worked in 2 or 3 places that really made me feel valued, but the rest of my experience in the industry was not that. So I am curious, you know, in talking about coming back to work and feeling like, okay, I'm so privileged to have a job. I'm so lucky that I get a job. How do we avoid having employees feel like, you know, they're being taken advantage of because they should feel oh so lucky, you know? How can we make our employees feel protected?
Something that we were just chatting about yesterday is the fact that we need to essentially revisit job descriptions with our model changing. You know, we're diversifying our revenue in a couple different ways. We have such a talented, multi-talented team that one of our goals is to sit down with each team member and say, okay, you know, this was your job pre-COVID. This is where we're going. How do you want to be involved? To what extent do you want to be involved? And just essentially get them on the same page and work together to make the best business we can. We don't want someone to return and say, okay, now your job is to put labels on these things, or your job is to do this, or your job is now to do this. We want to make sure that they still want to work with us in this new Dispatch 2.0, whatever that ends up being. So I think just empowering staff and being very clear about how things are changing. You know, it's not the same as it was. And I think in general, just keeping people feeling like they're part of something bigger, which has always been our goal. I don't know if you want to add anything.
I haven't been an employee for a very long time. I'm struggling to figure out or put myself in those shoes. To like, if I'm asking how, like I'm looking at the question, how can we protect ourselves as employees? Making sure that we work at the right places. Ask the bigger questions. Ask how can we also help with that change from the old model to the new model. We can't just sit back and rely on 1 or 2, 3 people or your boss to make that change. I talk with our team at work a lot about sports and team sports. So there's a coach, multiple coaches, there's a skipper or your captain, your vice captain, and then your players. You'll have your star recruits, you'll have your star players, your veterans, your all that sort of stuff. But at the end of the day, when the team goes out to perform, because that's their job, they're going out to work. They're not going out to run around on a field and play a game. They're going out to work. That's their job. The only way they can hopefully win is by performing as a team. So you don't go out there as the midfielder and just wait for everybody to pick up your slack because you're not pulling your weight. You go out there to win for the team. So as an employee, if you just turn up to do your job and that's it, well, you're not helping or even protecting yourself. We all together need to, as a business, we all together need to work as a team to make that business succeed, so that when you leave to go on to something else, you're leaving something behind that was successful and you've made it better for yourself. But while you're there as well, you need to have that voice and utilize that to help and ask for change as well. I don't know if that makes any sense.
I think for me, I totally agree. I think that part of that as well is just having boundaries, having clear boundaries. I don't think that we're, as people, like, I know I'm not great at saying no at times, and I think people can probably relate to that in this industry, especially. Like, we don't ask for help, and we don't say, we don't like to say no, because we're trained that that's not the right those aren't the right answers. I think that it's important to reshape that, and I think boundaries are one of the most important and powerful things in that. I don't think you should feel going into a workplace uncomfortable at any point. I don't think you should feel like, if you don't want to be there, it's clearly not a good fit. There are other options, and even though I think there will be, things are changing, it doesn't mean that you aren't able to still control, I think, your fate and your future.
I know for me, the minute that I had two kids, I started to say no a lot. And I think that, it's two sides for sure. Like, we as employers have to create an environment where people feel comfortable. Sorry, my dog. People feel comfortable, like, coming to us with an issue, and that you are open enough that if people come and say, like, I need this thing, or this isn't working for me, that you respond appropriately. But the other side of that, and Adam, I think you touched on it, but just this idea that, like, employees, like, help yourself. Like, you really have to advocate for yourself. And you have to step up, and whatever outlets there are available to you. Like, I know with us at IQ, like, we have a thing where you can call or email, like, any one of the partners and have a coffee, and you don't even have to talk about work. It's just called, like, coffee with Chris or coffee with Alan. And you can come with a problem about work, or you can come and be like, hey, I need to caulk my sink. Christine, can you teach me how? And I will. But we actually haven't found that many team members take advantage of it. So I think it's really important that the culture changes on both sides, and that it progresses and does become more collaborative. Because I think as employers, like, we can, be totally open. But I think younger people, or, people maybe a generation down from me, they don't always feel comfortable stepping up and talking or asking. And it's so important that employees ask and advocate for themselves.
I just want to add on to everything, because I love all of the ideas. And I think in addition to that is finding an ally on your team within wherever you're working. And I love the idea of having having tea or coffee with Christine. I'm like, I'll take advantage of that. There's a great book that I picked up right before COVID, and it was like Lunch with Lucy. And I'm just forgetting the name of the writer, but it had everything to do with, she was a small business owner, and she allowed her team to one day a week have make an appointment with Lucy. And Lucy was just a made up name of this person that was just come, and it was her as the owner, and they would sit and they would talk about whatever was going on within the company that was a problem or just a share. And they were, it was a time where they were on the same playing fields, and there was no boss, there was no employee. It was just two people having lunch together, being able to share. So connecting and finding an ally is a huge thing. That when I was an employee, because I've been an employee many times, and even just recently, maybe even like 6 months ago, I was an employee, but being able to find someone on the team that you can trust, and that goes far. I mean, it's hard to say sometimes that, open yourself up and being vulnerable and talking to people about things that are bothering you, but, entrusting that and finding that person that you really generally know that they have your back, and that if you do feel threatened, or you feel like a victim, or if you feel like you can't voice yourself, because that's a lot of the cases for a lot of people in this industry, that at least there's one person that may be able to come with you and to share your concerns with your managers or your supervisors or the owners, so that you don't feel so alone and so isolated. But I do feel strongly that it is about uniting together and really, for those that are staff and employees, and those that are owners, like to be able to find a way to communicate and to be able to share, what's going on within the space, and to know that you're not alone.
I think too, sometimes, like, I know for me, I'm a cook. Like, that's what I do. And I often have to, like, I've really enjoyed like learning from Hassel and Ariel, but like, I really have to remember what it feels like to be an employee. And I also, I'm still working on myself, like I was trained much the same as you were, Ariel, in like 60-hour work weeks, and we get yelled at. And, I staged in France, and like, it was insane. Like, it was absolutely insane. And so then to take me, who's had all this training that's not very good, that's not very helpful, that really in many ways, I think fundamentally has broken me in many ways. And now for me to kind of be in a leadership role, like, I know that I have to keep working on myself. I have to be a more active listener. And that's something that as an industry, we need to talk about too. Like, you need to take these habits that were ingrained in you, where, your chef would humiliate you publicly if you did something wrong, or make you work for free, or, I don't know, all the crazy stuff that happens. And sort of like, as people who've been in the industry a long time, like, we really need to deprogram ourselves. And that's difficult. That takes work. And again, like, it's so challenging, but I think just being aware and owning up to the fact that you're not a perfect leader, and that you're not always going to behave correctly. You haven't always behaved correctly, but as an industry, moving forward and creating space where employees do feel more comfortable, like, I really do feel like that's on us, and we have to collectively do the work.
Completely agree.
One thing, sorry, I know Suzanne has another webinar after this, so we are going to say goodbye to Suzanne. Thank you so much for being here. We can continue a few more minutes just to wrap up, but I know that you have to go, Suzanne, so thank you so much, and I'm sorry if we ran you over a bit.
No, it's all good. It's all good. Thank you guys so much, everyone, on this amazing conversation. Keep asking the question, keep doing all the things that you do, and love themselves, and be gentle with yourself. And I'll see you guys on the other side. All right.
Thanks, Sheffy.
Bye, Suzanne.
Thank you.
Bye, Suzanne.
So we are going to wrap up, but I did want to add two quick things, and then Adam, I'll let you finish your point. The first thing is that this topic, I think it needs so much more time. And Ariel and I talked about this before, and I think we are going to actually be continuing these webinars into the next month. And this is actually a topic that we're going to do again in a month. because we'll have a little bit more information in a month. And I know that there were some questions that were put in here that we didn't get to, but I know, someone put in here about substance use in the industry. I mean, I think we could have a whole webinar about reimagining what substance use looks like in our industry. So I didn't touch that question on purpose. I would like to readdress that in a future webinar. And the last point that Christine, you made about deprogramming, I mean, I think that also in itself could be an entire webinar, because we have been so trained and drilled. Like I've been shown a pile of resumes before, when I was an employee, and told like, you're disposable. Like, you don't like it, get out. I can replace you in a day, and so there is a lot of deprogramming that needs to happen. So thank you for making that point. So Adam, I'll let you finish, and then we're probably going to wrap up because I know that we're a bit over time.
Yeah, I'm not going to lie, I forgot what I was going to say.
Oh, okay.
I got a memory like this, Tim.
It was after Christine speaking about the
not being perfect. Yeah, not being perfect.
Yeah.
I think that's one thing that our industry, any industry, as an employer, as a business owner or management, carrying around that bravado that you know everything and that you don't make mistakes holds you back. I don't know everything. Constantly, day after day, I feel way out of my depth, and struggle with a lot of mental anxiety about and self-judgment, where you compare yourself against everybody else in the industry, and you look at how easy they make it, and you can sit back and just go, I am so far out of my depth here. But we need to, we certainly need to I've forgotten what I was going to say. I'm not going to lie.
I think that's such a great point, though. I mean, it's like you don't know a recipe, or if you're a bartender and someone orders a cocktail that you're not familiar with. Like, Google is such a powerful tool, and I think it's okay to not know something, whether it's about creating a psychologically safe environment, or what different terms mean, or how to be a better boss, how to engage in active listening. Like, I think that it's okay to not know things. I think the most powerful thing we can do is actually research and look into things. I mean, we have this incredible tool at our disposal, the internet. I mean, why wouldn't we all want to be better at what we do? And if what we do is managing, then why wouldn't we want to be better at managing? And hopefully in the process we can empower our staff and have a little bit more of that ethos we're talking about.
Someone posted a question about, and I think it's a really good point, and Ariel will definitely have to address it in our next one. But they posted about when we were speaking about cheap eats and comparing, lower priced brands to higher priced, more expensive brands, that sometimes people think of ethnic food as cheap, or there's like an expectation around certain cuisines to be less. They put, for example, people don't want to pay more for Filipino food, Vietnamese, Jamaican, Korean, etc. Like, I think that, just to end on that a little bit, I think that there definitely needs to be a reimagining around that as well. Because I know that I've heard that so many times from consumers, that they're like offended that they have to pay more for tacos or for, whatever else, a bao or, a banh mi, like as if that dish doesn't have the same overhead, labor, supply chain that the other places have. So I think what I've learned from this conversation, sorry, I'll let you finish in 1 second, Christine. I just wanted to end and say that I think what I've learned from this conversation is that there's so much more to talk about, because this conversation can clearly just go on and on and on. But Christine, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I mean, I think that is so tied up in race as well. And again, there's a lot to unpack there, but people are perfectly willing to pay $30 for a bowl of pasta, but people don't want to pay more than $12 for noodles, like Vietnamese noodles or something like that. And that again, whole other webinar. Would love to watch that one. I don't feel like I'm educated enough to talk about it too much, but and I'm not the right person to talk about that, but I think that there's a huge race component there that also the industry has to address. So many problems around like who holds up the industry, and just so much to unpack.
So, okay, on that note, I just want to thank everyone that has stayed on for this entire conversation this long. I can't thank you guys enough for your time. Panelists, thank you so much for sharing and being so honest and allowing for real talk. We're definitely going to continue. You've all inspired so many future webinars. So Ariel, I don't think we'll have any trouble filling future webinar topics. So on that note, thank you everybody. And you know, stay tuned for future webinars for this month and next month. I know we're definitely going to be having one every Monday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Thank
Thank you
you.
very much.